Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Rachel. This is Carrie, Archana, Brent, and Paul, and we are going to briefly discuss with you our topic, ethanol and fuel cells. So the first slide, thank you. Ethanol is a clean burning fuel, and it's made from renewable sources. It's produced from crops such as corn. And ethanol can be used in vehicles as fuel, which is called E85. That is where fuel is made with 85% ethanol and 15% unleaded gasoline. Only flexible fuel vehicles can use E85, and actually there are 6 million flexible fuel vehicles on the road today. Some benefits of ethanol, I'm just briefly going to say one of them, is it benefits the economy because it increases the demand for corn, and corn increases how much money that farmers can get for it, which then increases or brings economic development to the area. A little bit of the history, ethanol is actually, surprisingly, an ingredient for alcoholic beverages. Many people didn't know that. The first published formula for ethanol was in 1858 by Archibald Scott Cooper, and the first vehicle to use ethanol was the Ford Model T in the early 1900s. And now just briefly looking at fuel cells. What a fuel cell is it's very similar to a battery without having to recharge it, and it produces energy in the form of electricity. There are many different uses for fuel cells. The automaker industry, they're working on making fuel cell cars. And it can also be used in electrical machines such as vending machines, vacuum cleaners, laptops. And actually fuel cells, they became known in the 1800s, but it wasn't until the 1900s that it began to be researched and developed. And today researchers are hoping that sometime in the near future fuel cells will be used to power many homes across the country. So I'm going to hand it over to Archana, and she's going to talk to you a little bit more.
Thank you. I'm just going to continue with my fuel cells. As she described, fuel cell is generally an electrochemical energy conversion device. A fuel cell converts hydrogen and water into electricity. During this process, it converts, this electricity will be converted into mechanical energy, which will overall efficiently increases the efficiency of any automobile. So during this, for this task, many countries have been coming forward to do an agreement with this International Energy Agency. Here the first agreement goes with it started at 1990 with 7 countries and a five-year period for this, and then it started with 2 annexes, and now it is total of 21 annexes now. And the second phase, it started with 1996 to 1999 with 12 countries. So then again go ahead, it went on with 1999 to 2003 and another period for about 15 countries and 5 annexes. A new program has been started in 2004 to 2008. This here IEA is acting as just an umbrella, because this task has been shared by all the other countries, but it acts only as umbrella. And all the other countries has to provide its own. It has to bear all the cost by every country. And as I said, this task has been shared by all the countries, but there are only limited resources. Now the fuel cells have become the it's most costly because this now in the market it has to be around $35 per kilowatt, but now what is the cost is $110 per kilowatt. So in order to be in used by most of them, it should be competitive enough into the market. So further researchers have been getting, they are trying hard to reduce this cost and then finish it. Use it widely, so that the main advantage with this fuel cell is it reduces pollution throughout the world. So many countries now they're trying for the many other linkages along with the IEA to join this and complete this task. Now I'm gonna hand over to Kerry.
Okay, I'm just going to briefly go over some of the principles of ethanol. And as Rachel mentioned, there are a couple different ways that ethanol can be combined. There's E100, which is mainly only over in Brazil and obviously cannot be shipped too far because of its highly explosive. The E85, which is just a combination of 15% gasoline and 85% ethanol, which is what we see here in the United States, and then the E10, which is very common to see at the gas stations. And there are a couple of different ways that it can be produced. I only thought it was corn, but as I looked into it, Brazil actually uses sugarcane plants to produce their ethanol, which I thought was kind of interesting. There are two different ways to mill the ethanol. There's dry milling, which is basically they take the corn kernels and they ground it into flour or meal, and then this meal's combined with water and then produced into a mash. The enzymes are then added and it's converted into a starch or a simple sugar. Ammonia is added to that to control the pH levels and to act as a nutrient. From there, the mash is taken to a high temperature cooker and bacteria is produced, and then it goes through a cooling process and transferred to a fermenter, which is kind of why, as Rachel said, it's kind of like a brewery, so it has to go through a fermenter. And this process could take up to 40 to 50 hours to complete. As I said, it's kind of referred to as a beer type process because it goes through the fermentation cycle. And at this point, or after it's transferred, it's mixed with anhydrous ethanol, which is blended with about 5% natural gas so that it cannot be consumed by humans and will not be subject to an alcohol tax. Wet milling is whenever the corn or the grain is soaked in water and sulfuric acid, and it takes about 24 to 48 hours to complete. And after this, it goes through a series of grinders to separate the corn, and then then goes through like a hydroclonic separator. This is commonly used as a dry distillerator grain that is sent out and fed to livestock. And then also they sometimes send it out to use for salt, mixed with salt on icy roads. The basics for fuel cells, there are about 4 types of different fuel cells: phosphoric acid, molten carbonate, solid oxide, and proton exchange membrane fuel cells. And they'll usually go into 3 different sections, which are fuel processor, which is a natural gas, is reformed to increase the concentration of hydrogen, a power selection, and a power condition. So for each one of these, the phosphoric acid usually is used to clean surfaces, tough surfaces. Solid oxide is usually it's a ceramic base fuel that is high heat resistant and it can process energy for electric plants. The proton exchange membrane, it's very, very expensive and usually only used for space exploration, but they are trying to develop it for vehicle use eventually. So I'll turn it over to Brent.
So I looked at the pros and cons of ethanol and fuel cell usage. One of the biggest pros, obviously, is that it's for ethanol, is that it's a renewable energy, and with our world increasingly wanting to rely less on traditional fossil fuels, it's a great alternative.